Good morning, Panther Nation, and welcome to this episode of LHS Live, almost every Wednesday and almost at 10:20 every Wednesday. I'm Joe Roberts, special guest here, Daxton Frazier. You gonna step in here and give us some updates? You got something for us? All right, I'm gonna make way for Daxton, and I'll be right back.
Not very many announcements for this week. Oh, losing the mic. Not very many announcements for this week. We just have the SATs, which are being taken today, right now, so kind of missing out on that one. And football on Friday, so make sure you go support the Panthers and be there for your team.
Go Panthers.
I like that.
When he first started doing this, I couldn't get a word out of him. Now I can't get him to shut up. It's okay. One of our awesome seniors.
Good job.
All right, with us today, we have some special folks from the Houston Dynamo organization, Kenneth Schlein and Glenn Davis. And if you've followed soccer for any amount of time, you'll know Glenn. Maybe not be as familiar with Ken. Thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, appreciate being
Absolutely.
here. We love the drive down this morning, and we're excited to be here.
Everyone that says when they come to Liberty, they're always, I love coming to Liberty because it's so beautiful. You got all the trees, you got the river, you got all the cool stuff. You guys are from, what do you call that, the urban jungle downtown.
Concrete jungle for sure.
That ain't no lie, that's for sure. By the way, great local coffee shop, too.
Oh, absolutely.
I stopped in this morning.
We've got there's some hidden gems here in Liberty if you're not familiar with them. Yeah. Well, no one wants to hear about me and what I have to say. They want to hear about you guys. Now, forgive me, Robertson Stadium, is it still that?
So it used to be Robertson Stadium for the Houston Dynamo.
Okay.
Then they built their own stadium in downtown on the east side. It's now called Shell Energy Stadium, but it's a gorgeous soccer-specific facility.
I knew that. I was just making sure that you knew where you worked every single day.
Ask me that in 5 years. I might not know where I am.
Well, let's kind of just go through this thing. A lot of people in this particular area have gotten familiar with the game of soccer throughout the years. They're less familiar with the pro game in Europe and elsewhere, maybe familiar with Major League Soccer. And you played both for the national team, local
Not
teams?
the national team. I played professionally, though.
Okay, professionally, yeah. But you've been around so many of those guys. You're friends with all the people that if I watched Fox or any of the other cool stations, I would know who they were.
We would know.
Okay,
yes.
Cool. So, Glenn, you are the broadcast guy for the Dynamo, right?
Yeah, so I can just kind of give you a little bit of background real fast. Yeah, I'm currently the play-by-play guy. I started after playing professionally as a color analyst, which is the natural progression usually. But then I decided to learn the play-by-play side of it. So I do play-by-play on Apple TV. It's the local call now, but for many years there was a local call and a local production. Now it's all handled by Apple because Major League Soccer did a whole deal with Apple TV.
So going from color analyst, which you probably, whenever I watch soccer productions, the color analyst always says more cool stuff to say. The play-by-play, sometimes pass. There's a lot of that going on.
Two distinctively different roles. The color analyst is meant to tell you how and why things happen. Mm-hmm. Those are the two key words. If you're an analyst and you're doing a game, you're expected to tell people how and why things are happening. The play-by-play guy sets the scene and tone a little bit. Is identifying players, maybe a little bit of storytelling in soccer, not quite as much as in baseball. But the play-by-play guy also sets the person up. What I've always felt is a little bit of an advantage for me is the fact that I was a professional soccer player. So if my partner here is Ken, I can set him up with things that also I'm seeing, based on the way the game's playing out.
So when you started doing play-by-play, did you get any direction, or did they just kind of throw you in that?
That's a really interesting thing because I kind of got thrown in, to be honest with you. It's a really good question. I got thrown in on a German Bundesliga game in Los Angeles, basically off a monitor. Mm-hmm. It was Fox Sports World at the time. But Yeah, so after that happened,
Saying those games
after
must have
that,
been
yeah, after
tough.
that happened, you know, the realization came to me that, look, you know, the 94 World Cup guys, Lexi Lawless, all these guys are going to end up being the analysts in a lot of ways just because of the notoriety
Right.
so, hey, why not learn the play-by-play job? And I did that. I had a lot of people help me, mainly a lot of other play-by-play guys like Bill Land in San Antonio, who's actually retiring on Saturday with the Spurs. He was very helpful, and even behind-the-scenes people like Ken have been very helpful in my career.
Well, I ask you that because I was watching a YouTube episode. I love to I'm a nerd about that kind of stuff. So I was watching a gentleman, and he was talking about when Pat Summerall got hired to do some golf event, maybe the Open or something like that, and the producer told him, if you say anything that someone can see, I'm going to fire you.
Yeah.
And so his idea when he was doing golf play-by-play, as it were, was to say less because people could see, but kind of give the highlights. So you're
that's the beauty of TV. I mean, TV, and if you're doing a soccer game and you've got great natural sound, you don't have to talk. You can do what is called, quote unquote, laying out, and that is then you just let the audience reboot to what they're seeing. And I'll do that often in games. You know, I might not say something for 20, 25 seconds. You don't need to. I mean, if you're doing a game in the LA Coliseum and Ronaldo or Messi's there and there's 90,000 people, it's just the sporadic insertion of words at the right times, and then the rest of it is you let people's eyes take over. Now, radio's a different story. You know, you got to fill the airtime for the most part. If you're calling a game on radio, because obviously people don't have a monitor to look at, and
Right.
You are their
that
eyes.
makes yeah, right. So you have to be very descriptive, and you're going to use a lot more words.
We're going to come back to something you just said because I definitely want to ask you about some of the more popular figures in the world of soccer. All right, Ken, you are kind of the behind-the-scenes guy, right?
Yeah, just so everyone knows a little bit more about me, I've done video production since I was 14. I've worked every major sporting event that you can imagine, from the Super Bowl to the World Series, All-Star games, World Cups, Messi games, you name it. Chances are I've worked it and set it up. I'll go in with trucks, television trucks, whether it be 1 or 10, just all depending if it's a regular Texans game or is it the Super Bowl, depending on how many trucks we'll use. And then I'll get there days or hours before, depending on the show, and set it all up and hopefully get it perfect. So when Glenn gets there, he can concentrate on the game. And, you know, that's what I want him to worry about. He doesn't have to worry about production. That's my thing to worry about. He can worry about calling the game.
I was easy to get along with, right?
Always.
I wasn't one of
always.
those types of.
Hey, I'm here with you
I
now.
wasn't one of those, you know, commentators that need my M&Ms, the brown ones, taken out or any of that stuff.
Never, nothing like that. Like I said, I want you to worry about calling on the
That's
game.
interesting.
It's true.
I'll
I mean,
take
maybe I
everything
could be
else.
that way.
yeah, and I would just say this. You know, we're only as good as guys like Ken, right? We just happen to be the people that are in front.
Very
we're also
lucky to
lucky
work
we
with
don't.
them.
We're also lucky we don't have to go there as early as they do. So that's
my
also
gosh.
nice. But we do a lot of our prep at home, and
It's true.
watching a lot of games at home. A lot of you know the cherry on top of the cake is coming to the actual game day and doing the game. I love that because it brings me back to when I was a pro player and you had routines, you had disciplines you did on the day of the game. You know, the way you slept, the way you ate. I love that. And
Very
like I said,
regimented.
coming game day, it's fun because you've done all the work and you're ready to go. And now it's really up to the game and the type of game you get.
No matter what it is, the prep is always important for me and for him. So it's not all done in a day or done in a week. We're planning months in advance sometimes, and you know, Glenn's weeks out getting his stats together, so he knows the correct stuff when it happens.
Yeah, and the way teams play, you watch their patterns of play, you listen to the coaches' press conferences. I mean, you go on and on with, you can do as much research as you want. And then at some point you have to stop because it just becomes too much, because it really is ultimately going to be about the game. And you can, You can tell commentators who have the right balance of storytelling and then actually letting the game tell the story and accenting it.
Well, our producer was laughing. All right, get back into this thing. So Ken, we were talking about our setup time, and I'd mentioned that, you know, we're a very low-level operation here, and we strive to be as quote-unquote ESPN-like as we can.
Of course.
You guys are professional outfits, so kind of walk me through if you know an event's coming up, because I know you guys you've talked the calendar months in advance,
Yes.
and you have to coordinate with whatever professional organization. So for Glenn, you're coordinating with MLS or FIFA or whoever it is that you're covering.
Apple TV will come in and kind of take the reins.
Okay.
And then Apple TV will hire the production company. And then the production company will come in and hire all of the cameras, all of the audio guys, all of the crew that you're needing for the show.
So is that
as
all
well as
kind
the
of
announcers.
Is that all kind of subcontracted, or are they hiring a person who has a crew with them, or is it a mix and match of both?
That's a great question. It's all subcontracted, so it's a daily hire. You are getting hired per day, per show. So literally in our business, you're only as good as your last show. The announcers are a little bit
Yikes.
different. Yeah, right. The announcers are a little bit different because usually an announcer might get the whole season. And, same thing will happen if you're working a TV. They'll ask you to do the whole season if you're good at what you do. But still, if you do have issues and you do have problems, it can be taken just as easy as given. So
you're kind of doing at-will stuff. You're more contract-ish?
Yeah, I'm contract labor. Like you might get contracted out. I've been contracted out to do World Cups or Olympics, and that contract would have a certain amount of time as long as the tournament lasts and how long they're going to use you. I mean, MLS, you're usually contracted out for the whole season by the teams. I mean, I've done the Houston Dynamo in Houston, between other events, soccer events that I've done since their inception here in 2006. So, we've been on, let's think of all the networks we've been on. We've been on Fox, we've been on Comcast, we've been on Root Sports.
Telemundo,
totally changing.
Televisa.
Totally changing. Different studios. Used to travel to all the games, to do the games live in stadium on the road, and then that changed because companies began to want to offload expense and save money, and now you're doing games off monitor. In fact, last weekend I did a college game from a studio in my house while the analyst was in Florida, while the producer was in Kentucky.
Technology, right?
This
Love
is,
it.
it's a big money saver as well.
Okay.
That's the changing part of the industry.
So Copa America that was recently here, we had a Lionel Messi game at NRG, and there was literally 17 booths of announcers from all over the world. So you have 1 feet of soccer going on, but you have 17 different booths, each one with 2 to 3 people on it and with another person on the field announcing. So
I was going to ask, that's what I wanted to come back to. How bonkers is it when a Messi or a Beckham are in stadium?
Big games are different from the standpoint like Ken just described. I mean, I've been at some big games where there wasn't a lot of booth space, and it's a little bit crazy. But big players draw the big attention, the big money, the big sponsorship dollars, all the interest. It's going to be fun to watch Messi in the Major League Soccer playoffs, which they'll start on Friday.
Had a hat trick the other day. My gosh, that guy's crazy.
So his stadium that he plays in is a small temporary stadium in Fort Lauderdale, and they do have a problem with getting enough space for TV and radio crews to come in there and live call games. So my assumption is a lot of people are doing it off a monitor, maybe in a studio nearby, potentially even out in a TV truck in the parking lot. So not to get into Ken's game here, but since I've done that before,
Awesome.
I know the gig.
So Ken, what's the pecking order when you're going to an event? Because I know as local as we are, when we go to an event, sometimes there's other organizations that are doing the same thing that we're doing. So like you go there and Lexi Lawless is going to be commenting on the game or calling the game, and they're not in studio, they're right there at the event. Fox? Do they get a big chunk of real estate, and then everyone else is fighting for pieces, or how does that work?
You know what? The almighty dollar speaks very well. The more you pay FIFA, MLS, or whoever you're doing, the bigger space you get. There is usually a main feed, and the main feed will give their feed to other different entities so they don't have to bring their whole setup in. But sometimes each feed could have their own truck with their own cameras, with their own everything. But then it becomes too many cameras. So then say whoever's the world feed, the biggest show, will decide, okay, we want these 20 positions and you guys can take them from us and use them on your show, but we need these spaces for our cameras.
Yeah, and the World Cup is usually it's a set feed.
Yes.
It's
True.
it's very set.
It's true. It's true.
There's not a lot of. I mean, I just remember it from discussions in production meetings before games that it's basically this is the world feed, this is what you get, and you got to go with it, and you dress it up the way you want.
The world feed will be something called what we call a clean feed, which is just basically the program without anything on it. So no font, no anything. So you could brand it yourself, basically. Put your announcers' names on it, put your own little clock, score bug, and whoever's sponsoring it and everything like that. So you'll be like wherever the show is going with the clean feed will be responsible for putting in their own everything, even audio.
Right. So like Fox, when they get the last World Cup, they pay the money for it. They pay the rights fees to get it. Then they dress it up, and they're the main World Cup entity in the United States.
Absolutely, and we'll have people that will come in from Germany as directors and producers from everywhere, from Mexico, from everywhere. The producers and directors who are the best in the world will come in, and actually it doesn't matter if it's in the United States or in Europe. Whoever the best is will come in and actually be the person who calls it.
Well, I'm going to ask this question to both of you, and I'll let you decide what order you want to ask it in, because I'm always interested in this. You've got kickoff on a Friday at 7 p.m., okay? What is your week out, day before, day of look like?
Okay. Well, I usually will go get stuff for my crew, make sure they're happy. So waters, cookies, fruit, stuff like that. So in case they don't get a chance to leave, that they still have something there to be okay and still all right. And then I'll print out all the paperwork, and all the paperwork will say is camera 1 goes here, camera 2 goes here. This tape machine gets this audio. There is make sure we have goal cameras. Tell me how many announcers we'll have, where the announcers space will go. So the paperwork will tell me everything I need to. So I'll go over the paperwork. Usually I go over the paperwork as soon as I get it, but I'll really concentrate on it the day before, because if there is a problem, I want to know before I get there rather than showing up, reading the paperwork and going, oh wait, that doesn't work. So getting everything together the day before, making sure that the stadium is ready for the truck to come in, make sure the power guy is there to turn on the truck, make sure that we get it opened, and if we're in Texas like we are, we want the AC running as soon as possible. So when the crew gets there, it's not 90 degrees inside, and they if it's a nice 65, they'll start working immediately. If it's 90, people are going to wait a little bit and let it cool down. So I'll start getting everything ready for the crew the day before, just to make sure as soon as they get there, we can hit the ground running.
And then, Glenn, it's a little different for you because you might have to call 2 or 3 matches in a week's time.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, it depends. And sometimes you may have to split it. So like this week, I'm working on both a college game for the SEC network, and then I'm also already working on the Dynamo playoff game, which will be on Monday in Seattle. So I've gotten ahead of it. I always like to be ahead of it. You build out charts on all the players. You have meetings set up to talk to coaches. I also have a radio show that airs twice a week. So I cheat there by bringing on some of the Dynamo players and some of the players from Seattle and things. But, you know, all in due time between now and Sunday and Monday, I will have watched games of all the college teams, the 2 college teams. I've already watched Seattle's last game of the season, their draw against Portland. I called the Dynamo game. I'm up on that. I have a call with coaches on Friday and Saturday. Usually those are Zooms. So, you know, you're constantly, and you're looking at local newspapers. You're talking to people in the market from where those teams are from. Obviously, in the college game, I mean, the people who know the players the best in the college game are their coaches. But then I usually watch 2 games. I go back 2 games prior to the game that I'm going to call, and then do as much digging as possible. You know, sometimes there's podcasts that you have really knowledgeable people doing that you know you can learn and get some insight into. So, but it's also the fun part of it too. I enjoy the preparation part.
So your radio show, it was on 97.5?
Still is.
Still is,
Yeah.
and you've been doing it for a while, right?
I've been doing, believe it or not, I started a radio show on public radio because I was just frustrated with the lack of coverage of soccer in America, and this is going way back, I think like 2000, 2001. Started it on public radio and then found sponsorship and took it to mainstream radio, and I've been at the ESPN 97.5 in Houston a long time. But what people forget is because of the stream, you're essentially going global. So I bring in.
You gotta say the name of the
Oh,
show.
it's called Soccer
There we
Matters.
go. There we go.
Well, listen,
Because I was a little frustrated that I wanted it to matter more to people. It doesn't really, that doesn't apply as much anymore because it's an American game now. But, you know, with the advent of Zoom and things and home studios and things like this, you can bring on guests from all over the world.
well, I'm laughing because when I first met you, when you walked in, you know, an hour ago or so, something wasn't clicking in my mind. I've been out of soccer for a couple of years now, and I've detached, trying to plug back in. I actually called into your radio show
Did you
a
really?
number of years ago.
Awesome.
I'm sure I said something wildly ill-informed.
Oh, that's awesome.
I used to listen to your radio show as I was going home. I had these long drives back to Livingston, you know, hour some change, and so I would listen to Soccer Matters. And now that as soon as you said, like, oh my gosh, I know. Okay.
Well, I appreciate it. You kept me in a job.
Well, I enjoyed listening to your radio broadcast because it was literally the only thing that you could get. And when I was young in the game and trying to learn the game, I listened to your program quite a bit to learn the game.
And that's the reason why, you know, when I hear testimony like this, and I get this quite often now, that's what happens when you hang around a long time. But this is the reason why you really did it. I mean, and this is a fully funded show from myself. So I have to go out, sell the show. It's all on me. It's not just stepping in front of a microphone and people think you know a little bit about soccer and you talk. I sell the show, I promote it, try to market it, and just try to constantly grow the listener base.
It really matters.
I am going to be honest with you, though. When I listened to you on the radio, you were about 2 feet shorter in my head. You may or may have been wearing a cardigan and maybe a smoking pipe.
It's the beauty of radio, I guess. Now you see how ugly I am.
Well, you know,
I have a face for radio
Yeah.
myself. I get
they
it.
used to tell me that all the time, and they probably say that behind my back as well. That's fine.
No, that is the beauty of radio. See, that's interesting because you do have to use your imagination. When I was a kid, you did have to listen to radio to hear your sports teams growing up in the East, in New Jersey and New York. And I laid on the floor in the living room with my father listening to a radio, the New York Rangers. And when you close your eyes, you have to envision the arena and all the words that are coming out of the commentators' mouths, and the ice and chips of ice flying in the air, and you know, so your imagination is kind of a part of radio. That's kind of a fun part of radio, actually.
Well, when I was a kid, I could touch the TV if I held a coat hanger and maybe sang some church songs and kind of see the Astros coming in.
Don't move.
Yeah, don't
move.
So we're getting near the end of the program today, and every guest that I have on, I always ask them this one thing. If you had a life lesson for someone that was watching this program, and it doesn't necessarily have to pertain to what you specifically do, but some sort of life message, what would that be? And Ken, I'll let you go first.
Okay, on the spot first. Okay, so first of all, don't be afraid to jump into something. If in my business is how I'm looking at it. Like you're going to get the chance because someone else doesn't show up or something happens. Don't be afraid to grab it by the throat and go, yes, I'm going to do this and I'm going to kick butt on it. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to seem stupid, because there is no stupid question. If you don't know the answer, ask the question. And if you don't ask the question, you'll never get it. So if there's something you want to do, keep asking until you get it. That's what I would say.
I like that, and I'll just tag on to that. Disappointment's a part of life and development of all of us. I ran a youth soccer club, and I constantly explained to parents that disappointment, losing, this is a part of player development. Well, it's a part of human development too. To Ken's point, I would say be confident. I loved his mention of don't be afraid to ask people, and also don't be afraid to fail. You're looking at someone that's had a radio show for 20 years on the air, has called World Cups, has traveled the world calling soccer games, who never studied for any of this, and took a passion and turned it into a career. And it's you get breaks, you get good fortune, but you can really help yourself. And I think these days, people that have a work ethic and are respectable can really, really stand out, not only in the industry that we're in, but I think in general.
I totally agree, 100%.
Well, I'm super sad because I feel like I could do a whole series just with the two of you, and I didn't get to touch on
You
everything.
can talk
that
to
I
my
wanted
agent.
to. We'll get you on. I'll double whatever we pay you to come in.
Free coffee at the local
Deal.
shop, the local coffee shop. Free coffee.
Well, at any rate, I'm Joe Roberts. You've been watching LHS Live. Glenn Davis, Ken Schlein, Houston Dynamo. Catch us next week for another episode with, well, I don't know if they're going to be more interesting than you two, but they'll be differently interesting. We'll see you next time.